All right, so part two of our lecture today, I am now going to go over another example of writing maybe a little bit more applicable web page that will kind of mirror maybe what you might be doing in the challenge tonight. So I'm going to make a to-do list. I want to make a to-do list that will have an area where I can enter in tasks and submit it. And I want it to be tracked on the page, like keep tally of those to-dos. And I also want to be able to delete to-do items that I've already accomplished. So that is what we're going to be doing now. And again, feel free to code along if you want. And let's see, so we'll get started. I'm going to start with my boilerplate. I don't want these. We don't need these for now. And we'll have nothing there. So we have just empty. Again, we're going to link our style and our script because we will probably put some stuff in there. So let's put our styles in our style sheet and our script down here in our script source. Okay, so this gives our boilerplate. So kind of like we did today earlier, I just want I'm going to start putting together let's see, we'll do our window on load. I'm gonna have to look at that. I never remember quite exactly how that's laid out. Or that arrow. And this is just gonna hold all of the functions I'm about to write to populate our page for us. Okay, so first things first, I probably want a header. We're gonna start all our pages with a header. And I just want to call it like to-do list. So we are going to make our function and we're going to create our header or create H1 just so it's a little more explicit. We're going to make this an H1 header. Okay, so our steps we identified during our lecture before that we'll still be following now is we need to grab a parent. We're going to put this in. We're going to define a new element. We're going to modify that to have something in it, and then we're going to append it to our parent. So we're going to let body, we're going to grab the body because we want to stick this in our body. Query selector, we're going to grab the body. Okay, so now we're going to create our header, which is going to be create element. And we're going to create an H1 tag. Okay, so now we want to put our text within the H1 element. So we're going to H1, we're going to, what is it, text content? I always have to look at that. We're going to set the text content to equal to do list. Okay. And then we're going to append this into our body. So body, append child. We're going to throw H1. I always put high, H1 in there. Okay. So now I'm going to put this in our onload up here. So now when our page loads, we should have a header. Let's see, do I still have the page up? Yes. Okay, so we have our header identified here, to-do list. Easy. Okay, so now I want underneath, let's look at it again. So now I want an area here where I can type something and then click a button and add things to a to-do list because it's empty. So we're gonna need like an input thing here and maybe a button next to it that I can click and add things to our to-do list. So first things first, we want an input. So we're going to create an input. field here. Create input field. Okay. And to do that, again, we need to select a parent we're going to stick it in. Right now, I don't have any containers identified yet or anything, so I'm just going to select the body still. We're going to be smart. Just copy, paste. Okay, so we're targeting the body. We want to create an input. So there is such thing as an input element. So we're going to document, create element, input. Awesome. Okay, so we're created an input element. Now this is something you'll have to pull up documentation for. Let's see if I can. So it looks like input has a whole bunch of different things we can assign to it. We have a bunch of different types. Okay, so I don't want a checkbox, don't want a button. Thinking probably a text. Looks like it's the default value, so we could leave it and just expect it to be text, or we could define it also to be text. So we can do the input type equals, we're going to do text. Okay, that just makes sure that it's a text input like we want it to be. We want to be able to type into it. Now, thinking about this, when I type the text in, I'm going to want to grab the text. And so I'm going to want to grab this input element. So I might not have any other input elements, and I might be able to just try to grab it as input, but I think to be safe, we should probably give it an ID, because if we want to grab this easier or easily, it'd be best just to go ahead and give it an ID that we can reference later in CSS, in other functions that you might want to do stuff with this. So we're going to go ahead and label this to do input. So now we can grab this input text field. Another thing you can add, and this is what documentation will tell you, is you can add a placeholder, which will just be text that goes within this field as a placeholder, as it says. So I'm going to add a new text. Okay, so we've identified it, or we've got the parent, we've created the new element and input, we've modified it to kind of do what we want it to do. And now we're going to append it to our parent. Okay. So now we're going to also go ahead and add it up here so that we can make sure to run this function when our web page loads. So let's pull it up and see what we got. We see it right here. There's my placeholder text, says add a new task, and it looks like it's clickable. Looks like I can type in it. Can't do anything with it now. It just kind of holds text. So we will do that next. Next, we probably want to add a little button over here. Okay. So now let's create well, we can create, we'll create it separately. We probably could just throw it in the same function, but I'll go ahead and do it separately. Create button. So this one, where do we want to, we'll just put it within the body too. And we will see how this works. If it'll put it where it'll put it in the body by identifying it as a separate function. So let's create a button. We're going to document, create element, and it's going to be a button. Okay. And we are going to put some text on the button. So again, anytime we want to add text to something, we can do text content. And we're going to say, we add task. We click the button. And we're going to append this to our body. Throw it up here. Just let me know if I'm going too fast for anybody to follow along. And I will share this at the end of the lecture as well. Okay, so let's pull this back up. Perfect. So put it right next to it because we can see within the body, it's put our input and our button. It just has the one right after another. With styling, you can maybe change it around where you want it to be put, add some space between it, but for now we have each of these elements within our body. Awesome. So now we have something we can type into, and we have a button, but it doesn't do anything. So if we want this button to be interactive, next up we need to add a listener to it. But before that, even if we add an event listener, right now, we don't have anywhere to put these tasks at this point. So we could just slap it in the body and just throw tasks within there, but kind of like we did in our README lecture is we created a container to hold those boxes to go into. So to keep this nice and contained, so they're not just going wherever on this body, we're going to go ahead and create a container for our list. So let's do that first, because before we want to add these anywhere, we want a place to put up. So now let's go ahead and create our list of to-do items. And this is just going to be a container to throw that into. So we're going to grab the body again, like usual. Is it still copied? Yes. Because we're just going to put it right in there with everything. Now, I can throw for a list, we can just put a div in and throw some text in there, but there's also the list elements within HTML. And we have a couple of lists. We have ordered lists and unordered lists. There might be one more, but I don't think so. I think it's just ordered and unordered. I have to look, but I think that would be a better container for these items because I want it to be a list. So I'm going to, I don't want it ordered. I don't want numbers or anything like that. I just, unordered is fine. So an unordered list, just slap them on there. I'm going to go ahead and create element. And it's going to be an unordered list. Sweet. So we have our body, we have an unordered list created. Again, let's, for good measure here, let's go ahead and give it an ID just in case we need to grab it later, which I think we might because we're looking to throw some things into it. So if we want to select it as a parent, we should probably give it an ID so it's a little bit easier. So we're going to name this one to-do list. And we are going to add some style. I looked up some styling ahead of time just to make it look a little better. This is stuff you can look into in your own time. if you have time. This is something you can throw in after the fact. We could have just left this style out, but when you're looking at it, you can always go back and add it in your functions later. So we're going to have none for our type style. Padding, we're going to give you 0. I hate padding. Okay, so we've got that. We've modified it to kind of look like how we want. Now we're going to go ahead and append it to our body. Okay. So now if we pull up page, again, we don't see anything obviously, but oh, we won't see anything until I add it within our onload. Always add these within your onload, otherwise you will never see it. Okay. So now that we have it on our onload, we don't see anything, but it's here, kind of like that other div we created container on our other example. We have a list that's there, but it's empty, but it's ready for us to fill now. So next, we're going to go ahead and figure out how we want to take our task and grab it and throw it into our list. So how can we do that? We know we need to add an event listener. But it doesn't seem quite as easy as, oh, let me, it's back on. It doesn't seem quite as easy as just adding like a click and do something. It might, but it looks like we have to look at a couple of things. We have to grab this. So we're going to have to select this item, probably with the ID, and then we're going to have to place it in this list, which again, we're going to have to select that list before we can place it in there. So there will be a couple of steps we need to do. So let's write a function that's going to kind of cover all of this. We're going to maybe call this like add task. Did I spell that right? Functionality. Yeah. So this is going to be how that button works. It's going to take the input and add it to our list. It's going to be the adding functionality. So I know I'm going to want to grab certain things. I'm going to want to grab the input, right? So in order to do that, let's go ahead and just define it right now. Let's do our query selector to grab that input. We'll go ahead and figure out how we want to do that later, but for now we're going to know we want to grab it. So let's grab, oh, what did we call it? We called input to do input. Okay. So here we're grabbing the ID to do input and assigning it to input. We're going to do the same thing with our list because we want to stick it in there. So we're going to let just our unordered list equal query selector. And again, we gave it an ID, which was to-do list. Okay. So we've grabbed our input and our list. Oh, I keep putting enters in here. So now what else do we have to do? We're going to probably add our listener in now, right? Okay, so let's start fleshing out that listener. So we are going to How would we do this? If we want, so when we click the button, we want to take our input and put it into the list. What do we have to do with that input? It's kind of a best practice with any text input you get to make sure there's no like extra white space on the outside or anything. Does anybody remember? No. I'm going to go ahead and trim it so I can make sure there's no white space on the outside of it. So we're going to say this task we want to add to our list is going to equal this input value. So to target what's put in the input, we're going to have to get the value of it. So we're going to grab that input value and oh, why did it do that? Jesus. Let's see if it will not autocorrect to something I don't want it to do. Okay. And then we're going to trim it. Awesome. So that's going to give me whatever is put in that input box and trim it down so there's no white space on the outside of that. Okay. So now we're going to when we click the button, we want to take that, maybe I don't define it there. That needs to be done after we click the button. We're going to put that after we make the button. So we're going to do our event listener on the button. So button dot add event. Is that right? Have I messed something up here? I don't know why it's not looking like I think it would. No, it's working. It says event listener, I think. Okay, so we're going to add an event listener. And again, we put the event first. So we're doing click because we want it when it clicks the button. And then we're going to write our function of what we want it to do when that button's clicked. Okay, so here's where I think once that button's clicked, then I want to do this. That makes a little bit more sense than doing it outside of it. So we're going to get that task. So when the button's clicked, we're going to get the task. And then we just want to take that task and put it into our list. So we've already grabbed the parent. We have that defined above. We have our unordered list as the parent, but we need to create that element still. We have nowhere to put this task. Always follow those steps. So grab the parent, create the element, fill the element with what you want to fill it with, and then append it. So let's create an element. We're going to create, so each list, you have ordered list and unordered list, they have list items within it. So that's the element we're going to be creating. We're going to create a list item. So that's going to be create element, and we're going to do a list item. All right, so we're made an item. Now we want to fill that element with our task, basically. We want to put that task in the list item. So we can do our text content again. That list item text content is just going to equal that task. Easy. Okay, so, but we're not done here. That's the event listener. We've created an element, we've made a task, but we haven't done anything with that yet. We need to append it to our parent, which is going to be that unordered list. And try it. And that is going to be our list item. Okay. So let's see what happens just with this. And clean it up so it looks a bit nicer. We got our add task functionality. Let's put it up here. Don't forget to add it here. Save it, and let's see what happens with just that. Okay, so we'll put in our task. We click add task. Does not do anything. Button is not defined. What does that mean? Let's go back and look. So I clicked it, but it's telling me button is not defined. At add task functionality. So let's look at our add task functionality. Button is not defined. You know what? You're right. Because where in here have I told it to listen for a click on a button? So I know earlier I said it will watch for that click anywhere. But we still, I think we still need to define it. Let's do that. We'll see if that fixes it, at least. So what did we call that? It's just button. Okay. Did we? Yeah, we just called it button. It's just a button. I didn't know if we, we're gonna add a ID just because I don't trust just grabbing button. Let's name it add button. Okay. Let's see if this fixes it. I don't really know. Okay, so I'm gonna reload this. Still says cannot read properties of null reading add event listener.
Can you put the event listener in the button function and then call the create task out of that?
Add the event listener in the create button.
Yeah, since that's where it's a defined, because is this like out of scope since it's
No, it should not be, because we've given it this ID to go ahead and target.
Does it need the pound sign on line 45?
Oh, yes, it does. That should be it. Oh, and this is why we had to define it down here. This is why it said it wasn't defined, because we tried to target the button with the event listener, but we didn't have a button defined within this function. So now let's try this. Now this is targeting the ID. That is probably where the error was. Okay, so now that it's loaded, I don't see any warnings or errors over here. So I think we're good. Let's try this. Task 1, add task. Ta-da! It goes within our list here. Awesome. So we've got it, but I don't want to have to keep deleting this each time we do this. That's annoying. So let's go ahead and clear this. Let's throw that in there right after. Let's see. So after we put it in the list, we should probably clear out this button text, right? So with this, since we've already defined this input area, let's go ahead and do input. Let's see, we could do text content, or we could do, I think value would probably be better, just empty. So now, hopefully, when we go ahead and add a task, it should just empty out. There we go, empty. Each time we run this. Awesome. Okay, so it's storing our tasks down here. But next up, I want to add a delete button, but I want it to be with each of these tasks. So how can I do this? Because I want, right now we're adding tasks here. And when we click this add task, it'll move our input down here into this list. But how can I get a delete button with it as well? So I can just remove, I just want to remove this task. Does anybody have any ideas how I might go about this? What I should target, or maybe what I should look to work in to add a button that will be tied to each task. So if we think back to how I added an ID to each div programmatically, we might be able to do kind of the same thing here. So I'm thinking if I add a task and I click this add task, I want this listener basically to append my task and a delete button all at the same time. So I can do that because we have an event listener and we can put whatever we want within this event listener and make it do whatever we want. So I can make it just move the text, but I can also add, wait, what's the // I can also add a delete button for each task. So now when I click that button, I'm going to add this value of that input, but I also want to add a delete button with it too. So maybe I can do it down there. We could see how that would work out, but maybe I want to do it kind of around the same time this is being appended, just to kind of keep those elements together. So I'm thinking let's go ahead and maybe stick it in here, how we're going to do this. And then append, then I'm thinking we can append the, let's see, we could append the list item, and then we can append a button as well. So let's see how this plays out. Okay, so now I'm going to need, since I don't have any button here, I'm going to need to create a button. So we've already identified all these parents up here. We also have our list item, which could be another parent we could grab. So we'll think about that. But now I just want to create a button that I'm going to stick somewhere. So again, we can say let button. Let's make it a little more explicit. We're going to call this remove button or delete button. I like delete button. And we're going to create element and we're going to create a button. Okay. So now I have a button. We'll give it some text. So we'll say text content. We're going to say remove task. Okay. And now, so we want this button to do things too. We want to add an event listener for this button as well. So we can go ahead and do that right here within this other event listener. We're going to nest another one within it. So we'll go ahead and target our remove or delete button. And we're going to add an event listener onto that. Okay. So with that event listener, like most buttons, it's going to be a click. I want it to listen for a click. And we have something happening there. And what do we want it to do when it clicks? Does anybody have an idea? So I want it to delete the task. If anybody is talking, they're on mute. I think I see a few people talking, maybe. Okay, so in order to, oh, go ahead.
Is this where we would use the target to grab the list item?
The target, okay. Well, we can grab the list, it's right here.
Okay.
We can just grab that. We don't have to, we could maybe do some targeting with this, like add an event target, but we've already defined list item is going to be that task. So we can go ahead and just maybe remove. So like append item or append child, we can remove child as well. So here I'm going to target that list we were sticking it into, and it will remove that child. So now this looks weird because I'm appending that list item after all this. But this is an event listener, so this isn't going to do anything until you click it. So all this logic won't happen until I append this child and append, I'm going to have to append this delete button. Which I said there. So delete. Oh my gosh. Okay. And we're going to, oh my God, that's why. We got to append child, not append delete button. We're going to append the delete button there. Okay, so in that unordered list, we're going to go ahead and just stick that delete, the list item in there and the delete button. So this item will get put in the DOM before this button is even able to be clicked. So once it's in there, I can click it and then it will remove that identified list item. Theoretically, we can test this and see if it actually works. Let's make sure. So it's all within add task functionality. So this should work. Let's go ahead and look at what our page is saying. Do we see any errors? I don't see any errors here. So all looks to be okay. We'll go ahead and give it a shot and see what we can do. So let's put our task 1 in, add. All right, it looks ugly. Because again, what this is doing is it's literally just appending one right on top of the other. So it doesn't put them in line together. So we can fix that with CSS later if we want. But it put the task in and it put the button. So now if I click it, hopefully we'll watch the console to see if the logic works. Okay, so it removed the list item, but the button's still there.
Yeah, it stays there for each task. So I just like clicked add task a bunch of times, which is just a bunch of empty tasks. And it just adds like remove task buttons.
Okay, so let me try something different here. Because when I did this before, I put it above the list item. So let's see if that changes how it behaves. No. Let's see.
You
How
do
can we
remove
fix it?
child under the like on line 55 right after that. Can you do remove child and then delete button?
Let's try it. All right. So task one, we're going to add. All right. And then we're going to remove. Yay. Wait, is it gone? Let's see. It is gone. I don't see it here anymore. Hooray. All right. So that works. And let me just pop this in here to show you how pretty you can make it look with styling. I used a lot of help for this. This was not me, but you can target body H1. You can target each input thing, which I think I named them differently than when I did this myself. I think I did delete. I do not have the delete button separately. Okay. It'll throw an error if it doesn't work. Oh, so pretty. Now it looks a little better. Okay, let's do task one and awesome. So now I would probably move that back after it because that looks kind of ugly up on top of it. But there you go. All of that without even typing a single thing within our HTML page. So this should help you a little bit more thinking about how to add functionality and to the page that might be a little more than just a button click and, you know, do one thing. This is, you can nest it within there. I'm going to change this because it's driving me nuts. Yeah, so any questions? No. And I will share this. I will probably put this in GitHub and then share that with y'all. Let me stop recording. Was I recording? I was recording, yes. Yes, okay, good.